Hi Reddit. I've never shared this publicly, not even with my closest friends. Not really. Some of them know I went through something as a kid. I've heard the whispers. That's the girl who had an exorcism. They don't know the half of it. It's been 10 years since that night, but every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. In that house. Sitting in that damn chair on the lift, inching up the stairs like bait in slow motion. And it hovering just behind me, always out of reach, always just unseen. My name's Lily Hartman. I'm 23 now, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been in a wheelchair since I was 5. Some nerve thing I don't even bother explaining anymore. Legs that don't move. A body that fights me every day. You learn to smile through it because if you don't, you rot inside. Back then, when I was around 11, my parents bought a 2-story colonial-style house just outside Racine. Light blue paint, white shutters, a maple tree in the front yard that bled red every fall. It looked like something out of a family movie, but it wasn't. My room was upstairs, 2nd floor, end of the hallway to the right. We couldn't afford a 1-story home, so my dad, Michael, built this stair lift for me. He was handy like that. Not a store-bought one. No, he made it. Metal rail bolted to the wall, and a padded chair that clicked and clacked its way up the stairs, remote-controlled. First, it was amazing. I felt independent for the first time in my life. I could go up to my room by myself, read, draw, watch cartoons. But then, things started changing. It began small. You don't notice right away, you know? At first I thought it was just the usual weirdness of an old house. Drafts, creaks, lights flickering. My mom, Sarah, was always saying it was just settling. But sometimes I'd be home alone, and it didn't feel like settling. The first time it really hit me, I was going upstairs alone. I had just come home from school. My parents both worked late. I hit the button on the remote and started rising. Slow. Always slow. About halfway up, I felt something brush the back of my neck. I froze. My skin prickled instantly. I turned around, but of course there was nothing there. The next time it was worse. I was almost at the top when the lift jerked. Hard. Like someone had grabbed the back of the chair and yanked it. I screamed. The whole thing groaned like it was gonna rip from the wall. Then it just kept going. Like nothing happened. When I told my parents, Dad checked the bolts, the motor, the remote. Everything looked fine. You probably imagined it, he said. I knew I didn't. After that, the house changed. It was like the walls themselves grew eyes. I started noticing things moved when I wasn't in the room. My art pencils, always in color order, would be scattered. My doll would be lying face down in the closet even though I hadn't touched her in weeks. One night I woke up and every single book on my shelf was on the floor, stacked into a perfect pyramid beside my bed. It got to the point where I begged my parents not to leave me home alone. I told them someone was in the house. They installed cameras downstairs, but they never caught anything. Maybe it's a mouse, Mom said once, brushing my hair back. Or raccoons in the attic. Yeah, raccoons that build book pyramids and mess with stair lifts. Sure, Mom. I started having nightmares. And not the kind that fade by breakfast. These clung to me all day. In the dreams I couldn't move. I was stuck in my chair, and something stood behind me, whispering things I couldn't understand. I'd wake up with scratches on my neck, bruises on my arms. We went to the doctor. He thought I was self-harming. But I wasn't. I swear on my life I wasn't. There was one day I'll never forget. Mid-September. Sky gray like wet cement. My parents were at a dentist appointment, so I was alone after school. I sat at the bottom of the stairs, just frozen. I couldn't bring myself to press the button, but I did. I had to go up, so I clicked it. The lift started climbing. Click, click, click. Halfway up it stopped. No warning. No sound. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then the lights in the hallway above started flickering. One by one. Not fast, slow and deliberate. And I swear to God I heard breathing. Right behind my ear. Hot and low, like someone was leaning in to smell me. I screamed. I mashed the remote trying to go down, but it wouldn't respond. Then something pushed me. Hard. The chair jolted forward so violently I nearly fell out. It shouldn't have been possible. There's no mechanism for forward motion on those things. My backpack flew down the stairs and burst open. I screamed louder. Finally, the chair started working again, and I bolted into my room and locked the door. I sat there until my parents got home, rocking in my chair, crying so hard I thought I'd throw up. That night I told them everything. Everything. The breathing, the touch, the books, the bruises. Mom cried. Dad paced. They said they believed me, but I don't think they really understood. Not yet. After that night on the stairlift, I stopped using it unless someone was home. I didn't care if I had to stay downstairs the whole day. I wasn't going up alone again. But even downstairs I wasn't safe. The first time I heard the whisper, I was sitting in the living room, sketching in my notebook. The house was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Then out of nowhere I heard it. Lyily. Soft. Raspy. Like someone trying to breathe through mud. I froze. It sounded like it came from the hallway, but I was alone. I turned off the TV, thinking maybe I imagined it, but then it came again. Lyily. Come play with me. My whole body locked up. I wheeled myself into the kitchen, trying to get away from the sound. I grabbed a knife from the drawer. 11 years old, shaking like a leaf, holding a chef's knife in my lap like it was going to protect me from something I couldn't even see. I didn't sleep that night. And the next morning, Mom found the knife still clutched in my hand on the couch. A week later, I was back upstairs with Dad this time. He didn't want me to be afraid of the lift, so he rode with me. We cleaned my room together, reorganized my bookshelf. He made dumb dad jokes while he worked and kept glancing at me like I was a glass ornament that might shatter if he looked too hard. He didn't believe me. Not really. Until that day. It was mid-afternoon. Sun pouring through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the floor. Dad went downstairs to grab a toolbox he forgot. I stayed in my room. The moment he was gone, the air changed. I don't know how else to explain it. The light dimmed, like someone turned down the sun. It felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. And then the door to my closet creaked open. I stared at it. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums. I whispered, "Go away." Then something moved inside the closet. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. That's when the whisper came again, louder this time, almost angry. "Let me in." Dad burst in a second later. He said he heard something like a deep growl from the hallway. When he saw the open closet, he ran to it and yanked the door wide open. Nothing. But he didn't pretend it was nothing this time. He backed out of the room and took me downstairs without a word. I could see it in his eyes. He looked like a man who had just peeked into something he couldn't explain. That night, he started researching. I caught him at the kitchen table reading forums about hauntings, house cleansings, even possession. I wasn't the only one who was scared anymore. Things escalated fast after that. Lights turned off when we entered rooms. My wheelchair would move on its own. Nothing dramatic, but I'd feel it inch backward when I wasn't touching it. My drawings would be torn to pieces when I left them on my desk. One night, my mom found all the knives from the kitchen stuck blade down into the living room couch. And I kept hearing the voice. "Let me in." Said it over and over again. "Let me in. Let me in." And one day I snapped. It was the second week of October. Cold, raining. One of those days where the sky looks bruised and the wind sounds like crying. I was sitting in the hallway near the bottom of the stairs. The lift was off. The house was empty. The voice had been whispering to me all day, over and over. "Let me in. I'll make it stop. You won't be alone anymore." I remember pressing my hands to my ears, rocking back and forth. And I said it. I whispered it, like someone else was speaking through me. "Then come in." Instantly, I knew I had messed up. The hallway went dead silent. And then this is the part one can't forget, my body went cold. Not normal cold. Bone deep, like ice water had filled my veins. My fingers curled involuntarily. My jaw clenched. And then the pain started. It felt like something was pouring into me, heavy and fast, like I was being filled with cement. My spine arched in the chair. My eyes rolled back. My arms twisted at the elbows until my hands looked inside out, fingers bent backwards. I screamed. God, I screamed so loud I think I ruptured something in my throat. It was primal. Not a little girl's scream. A sound from the core of me, like my soul was being burned alive. My parents came running. I remember Mom's scream when she saw me. Dad fell to his knees, trying to hold me down, crying and praying in the same breath. My body wasn't mine anymore. It thrashed in the chair. I was foaming at the mouth. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was my mother, phone in hand, begging someone to come quickly, begging for an exorcist. When I woke up, everything was different. But I'll tell you about the exorcism and what really happened that night in part 3. Let's just say, it wasn't some movie-style ritual. It was something darker. And not everything got sent back to wherever it came from. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My wrists were bruised from where I'd been restrained. My throat felt like it had been cut from the inside out. I had no voice, just a broken, scratchy rasp. But I remembered everything. The voice. The cold. The moment it filled me like smoke pouring into an empty shell. My mom sat next to me, holding a rosary even though we weren't really religious. Her eyes were swollen from crying. My dad paced near the window, phone glued to his hand, making hushed calls. I didn't say anything for a long time. Just laid there, silent, watching the shadows on the walls like they were watching me back. They brought me home that night, against the doctor's advice. But we didn't feel safe there either. Not when the hospital lights flickered every time I got upset. Not when a nurse screamed because she swore my wheelchair moved on its own while I was asleep. Home felt worse though. The air was thick, like walking through syrup. The corners of every room looked darker than they should have. Cold radiated off the walls. The basement door creaked open by itself 3 times before Dad finally shoved a chair under the handle. And worst of all, the whispers didn't stop. Now they weren't asking. They were commanding. You said I could come in. You said it. You said it. My parents didn't waste time. They weren't skeptics anymore. Dad called everyone. Psychics, priests, energy healers, even a woman on Facebook who claimed she specialized in dark attachments. Nothing worked. The house just got angrier. Until we met him. Father Donovan. He wasn't your usual priest. He had a sharp jaw, long silver hair tied back, a scar running down the side of his face like someone had tried to carve out his eye once and missed. He walked with a cane and didn't smile. But when he looked at me, he didn't flinch. I've seen worse, he said. Not much worse. But worse. That didn't exactly comfort me. The exorcism happened 3 nights later. October 19th. The darkest night I can remember. It started at 11:47 p.m. Father Donovan lit black candles in every corner of the house. The lights were off. The moon was barely a sliver through the window. He marked my forehead with something cold and wet. It smelled like iron and old leaves. My parents were crying silently in the corner, holding hands, Mom rocking back and forth. She kept whispering, God, protect her, protect her, protect her. Donovan began speaking in Latin, low and slow. At first, nothing happened. But then, the floorboards groaned, like the house was straining to breathe. The candles flickered, and the shadows on the wall stretched longer and longer until they didn't match our bodies anymore. That's when the pain started again. It crawled up my spine like claws dragging through my bones. I screamed, and this voice came out of me. But it wasn't mine. It was deep, masculine, guttural, like rocks grinding against each other underwater. It said, "She's mine now." My body convulsed. My eyes rolled back. My jaw locked open so wide I could feel my muscles tearing. My arms twisted again, like they were being broken and rearranged from the inside. Father Donovan didn't stop. His voice rose, faster and louder, until it didn't even sound like words anymore, just power vibrating through the air. Then the room exploded. Not literally, but it felt like everything burst. The lights came on without being switched. The air filled with the scent of rotting meat and burnt metal. The windows rattled. My wheelchair slid backward 10 feet on its own. And then something ripped out of me. That's the only way I can describe it. It felt like my skin tore open, but without any blood. Like a second me, dark, heavy, suffocating, was being sucked out of my chest. I gasped. And then I collapsed. I don't remember much after that. But Father Donovan told us later, the thing that came out of me, it tried to flee. It moved through the walls, up the stairs, into the attic. But he sealed it in with holy oil and a binding prayer. He told us to never open the attic door again. So my dad nailed it shut, bolted it, covered it in a thick wooden board and placed a giant crucifix in front of it. We moved out of that house 5 days later. But here's the thing. That wasn't the end. Not really. Because in the nights that followed, even in the new house, I would wake up screaming, feeling like something was watching me. I'd see shadows where there shouldn't be any. Hear whispers coming from the vents. One night I woke up to find every mirror in the house fogged up from the inside, and written in long, jagged letters. You said I could come in. We moved 3 towns over into a quiet 2-story house with a ramp and a wide-open floor plan designed for me. No creaking wood. No attics. No staircases with strange noises at night. But I couldn't sleep with the lights off. Not even once. I was 13 and I still had night terrors like I was 5. I'd wake up screaming with my arms pulled tight to my chest, heart thudding so hard it felt like it would tear my ribs apart. Sometimes I'd find claw marks on my wrists, or bruises on my shoulders in the shape of fingers too big to be my own. My parents kept saying it's over. That thing's gone. But deep down, I knew the truth. It left its mark on me. At school, I was the quiet girl in the wheelchair who stared too long at corners. I didn't talk much. People thought I was weird. A few kids were kind. There was Taylor, who'd wheel me to the library during lunch, and Grace, who once punched a guy for mocking me during gym. But even around them, I never opened up about what really happened. How do you tell someone you invited a demon into your body? That some nights you still feel it breathing just beneath your skin? By the time I was 15, I started documenting things. I kept a notebook hidden in my closet. I'd write down every time something strange happened. April 2nd, all the lights in the kitchen turned on at 2:33 a.m. No one was awake. May 18th, dreamt of the old house again. Same hallway. Same laughter in the vents. June 9th, found my wheelchair facing the corner when I woke up. I never parked it like that. July 1st, heard the whisper again. He said I could come in. The worst entry was September 23rd. I'd been home alone reading on the couch. The ramp creaked. My lift made that metallic clicking noise, the one I hadn't heard since the old house. I turned my head slowly. It was descending. On its own. The lift. Even though our new house had no second floor. It took me a full minute to realize there was no lift here. That sound wasn't real. But I heard it. And I felt it. Like my body remembered before my brain did. And when I blinked, for just a second, I swear on everything, I saw the old stairs from our former house, plain as day, right there where the living room wall should have been. The wallpaper, the cracked railing, and a shadow, crouched halfway up, grinning at me. I screamed until I passed out. My parents didn't know what to do. They tried therapists, meds, meditation, EMDR. Even took me to a woman in Arizona who read my energy signature and gave me a pouch of rocks and black salt. None of it worked. Because this wasn't just PTSD. It was haunting. Something had opened a door in me and I couldn't close it. By the time I was 17, I gave up trying to fight it. I started seeing the world differently. I'd walk, roll through malls and feel which stores were clean and which weren't. I'd touch a doorknob and know someone angry lived behind it. One time, I was in the back of a rideshare and I turned to the driver and said, "You lied to your wife last night." He turned pale and made me get out at the next light. I didn't know how I knew these things. But it was like that thing that once lived inside me, left a piece behind. A sliver. A shard of darkness. A lens I couldn't take off. And then, 3 years ago, when I was 21, something happened that proved I wasn't imagining it. It was late. I was living in a small studio apartment downtown, right above a bakery that always smelled like burnt sugar. It was about 1:13 a.m. I was watching a documentary, half asleep, when my TV shut off. Black screen. No power outage. No storm. Just gone. And then my wheelchair started moving. Not fast. Just a slow, grinding roll toward the center of the room. I grabbed the brakes. But they wouldn't hold. And then I felt it. Hands. Cold. On my shoulders. And a breath, hot and sour, against my neck. I never left. I don't remember screaming. But I woke up on the floor. With every picture frame in my apartment shattered. The crucifix my mom gave me bent into a crescent shape. And the wall smeared with something brownish red. 3 words. Over and over. You said it. You said it. You said it. I moved back home the next day. I don't care how old I was. I needed help. And I needed to know once and for all if this thing still had a hold on me. I wish I could say this story ends with a miracle. I wish I could tell you I found peace, that I'm normal now, that I sleep soundly and laugh easily. But some demons aren't cast out. Some just hide better. It started again 1 month after I moved back home. This time it didn't crawl back in with noise or shadows. No flickering lights. No whispering from the vents. It started with silence. Too much silence. The kind that makes your ears feel like they're stuffed with cotton. The kind that presses on your chest like water when you're too deep underwater. I remember sitting in the living room, my mom watching TV on low when that silence swallowed everything. Even the sound of her voice as she turned to ask if I wanted tea. Her mouth moved, but I heard nothing. Not even the hum of the refrigerator or the chirp of birds outside. Then I looked at the hallway, and there it was again. The old lift, creaking slowly down even though it had never existed in this house. And this time I didn't blink. I didn't scream. I stared. And for the first time in 10 years, I saw him. Not a blur. Not a shadow. Not a hint. Him. The demon. His body was all wrong. Arms that bent backwards. Legs too long for his torso. He was naked and glossy like something born wrong, something that never should have survived outside a womb. His face was nothing but holes wide, gaping pits where eyes and a mouth should be. But somehow I could feel him smiling. He crouched on the old stairlift, tilting his head slowly to the side, and whispered in a voice that didn't use words. "You. Let. Me. In." I don't remember screaming. But my mom told me later that the entire living room shook. That every picture on the wall flew off at once. That my body started convulsing and my lips turned blue. I remember pain. That sharp, twisting kind of pain that comes from the inside, like being squeezed out of your own skin. And then I opened my mouth and his voice came out. I said she could be mine. My parents did what they always did when there was no logic left. They called Father Andrew, the same priest who helped when I was a child. He came within the hour. Old now, wrinkled and walking slower, but his eyes had that same fire I remembered. The kind of fire you need when facing something not of this world. They put me in the center of the living room. My wheelchair was gone, smashed in the hallway like it had been thrown against the wall by something inhuman. I was lying on the floor, twitching, eyes rolled back so hard I could only see white. My mom said I kept whispering things in Latin. I don't even know Latin. And then I began laughing. Not my laugh. A deep, guttural sound like a lion choking on blood. And then I sat up, back arched, hands twisted in the opposite direction, bent backwards, bones jutting, skin tearing at the wrists. My mom fainted. My dad just stood there silent, tears rolling down his face. Father Andrew began the ritual. The real one. No holy water sprinkles. No chanting from a book. This time he screamed at it. Demanded it speak its name. Demanded it release me. And I was still in there. I was watching it all. Like I was strapped to the back seat of my own mind. Watching my own hands claw at my chest. Watching my mouth open and release a growl that sounded like 20 voices speaking in unison. And then, mid-scream, Father Andrew took out a long, rusted crucifix. He pressed it to my forehead. And the second it touched skin, I felt everything. Every ounce of pain that thing had ever caused. Every scream it had ever drawn from a child. Every life it had touched, scarred, broken. And I screamed. Not the demon. Me. That night, my soul felt like it split open. Like something ancient and black was peeled away from my core and sucked out into the walls, into the cold night air, into nothing. The last thing I remember before passing out was my own voice, hoarse and quiet, saying, "Don't let it back in." That was 10 years ago. The demon hasn't returned. Not fully. But sometimes, I still feel it. When I'm alone in the house and everything goes too quiet. When I wake up and my arms are bent in my sleep, hands clenched like claws, face wet with tears I don't remember shedding. I've tried to live a normal life. I've gone to therapy. I've started painting again. I've even told this story to others in bits and pieces. But no one believes it. And honestly, I don't blame them. It's too insane. Too cruel. Too detailed. But it happened. To me. And if you take nothing else from this story, take this. There are things in this world that do not care about your innocence. Things that live in the cracks between dimensions. That wait for the vulnerable. For the ones who are alone. For the ones who invite them in. Be careful what you say to yourself when you think no one's listening. Because something might be. And it never forgets your voice.